A former Premier League footballer finished 145th in FPL last season, and he's revealing his team with us on this channel right now. Don't go anywhere. Introducing the former Coventry City, Northampton, and Leicester centre-back, Matt Heath. Matt, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm really good, thank you, Johnny. How are you?
Yeah, I'm buzzing to have you on, mate. Firstly, I can't believe I'm speaking to a former Premier League footballer. Secondly, I can't believe you're revealing your team on this channel. But most importantly for many watching is you come with FPL pedigree. Like 145th in the world is the stuff of dreams. Let's talk about that in just a sec. But first, you did play Premier League football for your boyhood club, and we have to touch on that. Just tell us about sort of growing up playing in the Leicester City Academy to then going on and actually playing first team and in the Premier League.
I mean, before I do that, Johnny, I mean, we're teammates, aren't we? We're a centre-back partnership from game week 39.
Do you know what? I wasn't going to mention it.
Why would you not?
We did have a good 45 minutes together on the pitch at the Hawthorns, and you guided me through that, mate. So yeah, I'm still eternally grateful to play alongside you, because you literally coached me for 45 minutes.
Maybe, but the pleasure was all mine. I hope all the listeners know how you play with your heart on your sleeve. No prisoners.
Yeah, I definitely don't have the technical ability that you had. I was more just rose ed as you were sort of getting the ball down and playing it so nicely every time. But yeah, thanks for mentioning that, mate. Tell us about playing for Leicester then and in the Premier League. Like, picture of you here with Louis playing against Louis Saha, and I think Ronaldo played this game as well.
He did, yeah. I was really lucky, actually, because I got to play a Premier League game and a League Cup game at Old Trafford in the same season. And David Beckham was playing, Ronaldo was playing. I can't remember if they were in the same game or different games. But, we were just briefly speaking off air. I was so lucky. I was a young boy watching Leicester City with my dad. Had all my heroes playing for the team. And just luckily, year by year, as I got a little bit older, I was in the academy and I stayed in the academy. And you get that little bit of luck. Certain managers and coaches like you, and just all of a sudden you're in the reserves and you've got a chance of making it in the first team, and I was one of the lucky ones.
That is amazing, mate. That is you've had the career that so many would envy, and your career now around football is teaching youngsters, but also playing FPL. So let's come back to your journey as a footballer later in the show. We'll do a bit of a Q&A, guys, so stay tuned for that. If you're enjoying the show so far, do hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as well. But this was your season last year in FPL. We can see your overall rank down the left-hand side. In game week 26, you broke into the top 10K. And boy, you didn't leave it. And it just got better and better and better. You had a 10K game week rank around game week 35 to 269 in the world. And your best rank for the entire season came in game week 38, where you finished 145th in the world. Just tell me about that. I'm guessing you've never had this type of finish in FPL before, not this good, but I mean, that is just a worldy, elite, top tier performance.
No, for me, I've been playing FPL for quite a few years. Even when we used to play professionally, we'd get off the pitch and get onto the team coach on the way home and all discuss about how our teams have gone. But it was so laid back and so, I don't want to use the word serious because it's not, it's a fun game. But I do take it a little bit more serious in the last couple of years. And I think this season is 1 in a million. We were chatting before, and there's a lot of engaged, good managers that consistently finish in the top 10, 20K like yourself. And I think just 1 or 2 little decisions throughout the year will just get you above a few people. And for me, obviously, it was nice that the last game week rank was my highest, and I didn't feel like I hit a peak and then fell down. I was always climbing, as you can see, loads of greens near the latter end of the season.
2 red arrows there from game week 25. That is insane. And in game week 38, at half time, weren't you around sort of in the top 100? Because you were checking like all the live ranks, right?
Obviously. I can't remember how it worked on the last game week. It was a few weeks ago now, but I definitely know I was like 99th at half time, and I was like, come on, here we go, we can do this. But it wasn't to me.
It's funny, as FPL managers, we always just want that next threshold. Like, we're never happy. You can get top 10K and then you want top 5, or get top 200, you want top 100, unless you're winning the thing. And that's a 1 in 11 million chance, then
exactly.
you're never completely happy.
But I did have that little bit of disappointment at the end, but then I was like, why? What am I doing?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely hero finish there from you, and just season altogether. I can't wait to see your plans then for 2024-25 season, because I guess the big headline for your draft, and spoiler alert, you've gone Haaland, or you're very likely to go Haaland and Salah. Let's just talk about Haaland first, because 15 million, like, what did you make of that price point? Because it's really given us something to think about, but you've clearly seen that price point and gone, I still think he's worth it.
I don't know if he's actually worth 15 million compared to how much everyone else is, but I do feel like the people in charge have had to do it to make it a 50-50 decision. Or at the minute, I think it's less than 50% that he's owned, but it may even out a little bit. Yeah, so I think they just had to do that to make the game more interesting, to make everyone not have Haaland and not be able to captain him when he's playing at home or against an easier team. So for me, it's an opportunity to still go with him and take his points where other people won't have to. I think a massive pull for me as well is him playing at home to Ipswich in the second game. Now, I know they've done really, really well to get promoted, and they're quite clearly a good team with a good manager, but that step from Championship to Premier League is insane. And I feel like going away from home, they play Liverpool first game, so granted, it's at home.
Yeah, Chelsea. I think Man City played Chelsea first game, and Ipswich played Liverpool first game.
Ipswich play first game, and then they go away to the Etihad.
Welcome to the Premier League.
Wow, they could be on a minus 12 goal difference by then quite easily, and that's not being silly. But only time will tell. But that is one of the factors why I've put him in from the beginning, and I know a lot of people say it's easier to move away from him than move to him, but it's a valid point.
Yeah, and when you put Haaland in your team, is there part of you that goes, because you've committed so much funds to Haaland, maybe that means no Salah? Or for you, was it, no, these are the two players I need, and I'm going to start with these two, and then that will form the core of my team, and then everyone else fits in? How likely is Salah to remain?
It all depends on how I look at Liverpool during pre-season. At the minute, I've put him in because, again, I've got a little bit of a backup plan if I don't want to go with Salah. It obviously means I've got to forfeit a few other players that I'd love to have in the team. So again, it's a first draft, like we've said. It's something that I've got in my mind if everybody fires in pre-season, and then we'll move on from there. But again, Mo Salah, he's had a fresh outlook over the summer. He's going to have had a full pre-season. He's going to want to impress a new manager. Liverpool might just have that spark come the start of the season, and again, away at Ipswich first game, he could take off.
He could. What do you make of you've played under a lot of managers, and you must know the difference between the same core group of players but a different manager coming in.
Unbelievable.
For Liverpool, this could be big change, right? Yes, it's the same core group, a very experienced Premier League side with little transfer activity, but slot we know nothing about in the Premier League, and we have seen very good managers come over to the Premier League and struggle in their first or second seasons. So should we sort of err on the side of caution with Liverpool and not expect too much? But obviously the fixtures are there for them. Like Liverpool's fixtures are top of the ticker: Ipswich, Brentford, United, Forest and Bournemouth in the first five. Yeah,
obviously class is permanent, form is temporary, so we have got a class bunch of players, but from an ex-player's point of view, when a new manager comes in, everybody is on an even playing field. And everybody, if you've been in the, on the subs bench, or if you've just been in the squads, you're on, again, a starting point. And most managers will come in and say, look, I'm drawing the line of what's happened in the past, and everyone's got an opportunity to impress. And that's what will be happening at Liverpool. Mo Salah, obviously, I'd imagine he's thinking, well, I'm the best player, I'm the talisman, this is me, and I'm sure the manager's thinking that as well. So his place in the team, you'd imagine, isn't under threat unless something happens with injury or horrendous attitude, or he wants to move on or something like that. But he will still want to impress and make sure that the manager knows I'm the man, in my opinion.
Nice, yeah, okay. And there's talk that he might even play more centrally. That'll be interesting, whether it's he's on the right hand side but really central, or even as the number 9. I don't know if I like him as a 9, but let's see how that pans out. Let's talk about some of your other picks then. You've gone for like me, a double Newcastle attack.
Mm.
Gordon and Isak, in their own right, in isolation, feel like two excellent picks. But I don't see that many drafts with managers that have gone for both. And when I look at them in their own right, I think, yeah, pick them. And therefore, the double up is a legit option. And again, fixtures, Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, Spurs at home, Wolves away, Fulham away. It's a good run of 5 fixtures. Only 2 of them are at St James's Park, and we've seen they are better at St James's Park, Gordon especially. But it's a really nice high upside game for game week 1. What do you make of this combination?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Again, Southampton, a promoted team. Yeah. St James's Park is probably one of the, if not, in the top 2 worst places to go for the first game. Yeah. So I could quite easily see it being 3-4, 5-0, or 5 goals at least. That being said, and maybe I should have mentioned, I've got a little bit of a pre-plan of when I'm going to use my wild card, when I'm going to use my maybe free transfers, and that could come quite early. So I'm just looking at maybe a little block of fixtures near the beginning of the season, which I feel like Newcastle could just take off again with 2 home games. Tottenham a little bit more attacking, free flowing. Newcastle have a good record, I think, at home to Tottenham. So that's the reason why I've gone for these 2 guys. And like you said, Isak is being, I mean, his stats show how close he is to Haaland with the expected goals. So I think for me, it's just a nice, easy, safe bet. And they're not too expensive.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned your wild card then. Does that mean you're maybe looking at bookmarking a wild card in around sort of game week 6? I mean, I noticed, for example, you have many Arsenal players in this team. So jumping on Arsenal around that time when their fixtures turn is what many will perhaps look to do. And I'm in a similar sort of boat to you here, same boat.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of flexibility in my head, but I've kind of blocked. For me, home games are huge for Premier League players. And I look at little blocks of games 1 to 3 and then maybe 4 to 7. And they're where teams have more fixtures at home than away from home. So for me, I'm looking at that first little block of 1 to 3, and then there's a flexibility of even using a wild card if I need to at that point, or using 3 free transfers or 4 for like a mini wild card with a small hit. Yeah. And then going into the second block of transfers again, like you say, Arsenal I think they have a couple of real strong home fixtures together. I think it's probably game week 5 and 6, is it? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think they've got
6 and 7. They play like Leicester at home, and
bad for Arsenal. I mean, they've got Wolves and Brighton at home, but the 3 tough away trips. They go to Villa, they go to Spurs, and they go to City, all in the first 5.
Exactly. So that's probably one of the reasons why I've just sided away from them, even though they could hurt us in game week 1 and game week 3. But I've just got them here. Leicester home, Southampton home, 6 and 7 is probably something I'm looking at to hop onto someone in form then.
Nice. I was looking at the scout members area earlier, and the Arsenal defence last season does put everyone else to shame in terms of clean sheet, expected goals conceded. They're top in all of Europe's 5 leagues. Like Arsenal domestically with the best defence. So not having any of their players, I feel really guilty not going there. I feel like it's a naive move, but you and I are both in the same boat here, and maybe going, no, but we will have them by game week 6. There is,
it's not set in stone, is it? It's
exactly.
It's a very fluid game. So at the minute, you can't have them all as well, Johnny, can you? You can't have everybody.
There's always got to be a compromise.
A few sacrifices here and there.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us about one player. I guess you're not having to sacrifice here, and that is covering the Crystal Palace attack, which was also very good last season under Glasner. Eze at 7 million. I mean, you've got also Gibbs White at 6.5. And João Pedro at 5.5. Those 3 players are all on penalties. They're all arguably the best attacker for their team. Some might call them talisman. Eze's an exciting pick. And again, he's been a really popular own. Like, he's over 30% owned. Probably because he's cheaper than Mateta. Mateta 7.5, Eze 7.
Yeah, obviously, he's a great player. Had a great season. A few question marks around him, how he's going to fare with Elise not in the team. A team's going to be able to double up on his side or around him a little bit more because they've not got to worry about the other side of the pitch. For me, he's the question mark in my team to start off with, because I really do like a couple of other players that are in that bracket in midfield. Johnson at Spurs. I think he might have a real good season. Bailey at Aston Villa. And even Rodgers coming through at Villa as well. He's one to watch, in my opinion, see how he might not start the season, but I am sure everyone will have him in their team at some point in the season.
Yeah, interesting.
So for me, I'm at the minute, again, pre-season's coming. I'm going to start with Eze at the minute if it was going to start tomorrow. But again, it could just change.
Nice. Stay tuned, because after we've seen Matt's team, I'm going to ask him some questions. One of which is centered around an Ivan Toney and his penalties. Matt, you used to play with him, so we won't give it away now, but you used to play with Toney, and you may have contributed to him taking penalties the way he does, but we'll learn more about that later. Let's look at your defence. And guys, do hit that like button if you're enjoying the show, but also do subscribe to the channel with that notification bell. Drop a comment too. Defense is cheap, but it has to be because you've got Salah, you've got double Newcastle attack, you've got Haaland. Of course, you can't be going and 6-7 million defenders. But your 4.5s and 4.5s this season in general have offered us so many good options that I'm shocked by how many good 4.5s there are. I mean, yes, we can see Murillo, Forest got good fixtures. Mikalenko is so obvious at 4.5, Anderson too, but Henry in there, even if we look at the Sandro Martinez or Esri Konsa or some of the Chelsea guys, so many 4.5 options, which makes me think maybe you can get away with not having a premium defender for the first few weeks.
Only time will tell. But again, for me, like you say, it had to be cheap to fit everyone else in.
Yeah.
I think the main thing for me is a rotation that I could potentially have, again, for the short term, for the first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I've got on paper, and again, some of these players like Henry might not be fit, but the team is what I'm looking at the minute. So they could quite easily change him to somebody else in the Brentford team. But for me, that I've got a solid 3 players to play in the first game week, and Anderson, Southampton, and probably Mikalenko again in the second game week. So it is, again, just a rotation. And then we've also got and without going into it too much, look at the bonus system point change. And it does favour the forwards and take away from the defenders a little bit. So that is another probably factor. I do feel like Trippier could be a good shout, again, hopping on Newcastle early on in the first 3 game weeks. So if I was going to go a little bit more expensive with one player, it may be trying to fit him in.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, because a lot are looking at, say, Trent or Gvardiol, but Trippier, you're right. Like, we forget how good he was at times last season in terms of attacking threat. Interesting that you mentioned the bonus point system. You're right. Like, if premium defenders are going to lose out in it, then do they justify the price tag? Maybe not. And also interesting that you say, look at the team first, maybe not the individual, especially when we're talking budget picks. You're investing in a back line to keep clean sheets. You're not picking these guys for goals and assists necessarily. So if Henry's not fit, you like the idea of covering the Brentford back line because of their fixtures, their manager, their style, etc., etc.
Exactly. We can obviously look at the small, minute player that's going to have a little bit more attacking potential, but for me, you're just hoping that you get 1 or 2 clean sheets in the first 3 game weeks. You're not losing out too far behind the premium defenders, and you're just hoping that then a few extra million in your midfield and attack just pay off.
Yeah, I do exactly the same thing. I look at team first. Not everyone does, and I don't think there's a right and a wrong answer, but especially with budget picks, I invest in the team before the individual 9 times out of 10. In goal, you've continued with, I guess, the Brentford and the Aston Villa and the Crystal Palace theme. So you've got a Brentford and Palace defender, but you've also got both in goal. These are the 2 I went for when I made my first draft. They rotate really well for the first 10 game weeks. I think you can have it so 8 of them are at home. The goalkeeper will play at home in 8 of the first 10.
Exactly.
And they don't play a big 6 or big 8 team in that time either. So, yeah, at times this might mean that you have double Brentford defence effectively or double Crystal Palace defence. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. It's a funny one, really, because you are putting a few more eggs in a basket and you're thinking if it doesn't pay off. But I'm happy to have that little bit of a gamble in defence. If it does pay off, great. You've got 2 clean sheets straight away. They're proven Premier League teams over the past couple of seasons. The Palace new manager last season had a great end to the season, so I'm hoping that may carry on. But again, the only stats we've got are last season's stats to go off. So at the minute, obviously they might carry on if they've got a consistent manager. However, it's only fixtures that we can go off really for this season. Until the season starts over the first 3, 4, 5 game weeks, you can't really go on a statistic trend, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, completely agree with that. Mate, I look forward to seeing how your team maybe changes pre-season, but so far, I mean, it looks like a fantastic draft. I like the fact you're light at the back to then get all those exciting attackers in. Lots of penalty takers. No compromises really in attack, no obvious ones. I mean, there's no Cole Palmer there. There's no Arsenal mid, but you can't have them all. And you've still got double Newcastle attack alongside Salah and Haaland, which I love. Matt, I wanted just to ask, go on.
No, I was just going to say, my only concerns are I've not got Palmer.
Yeah, go on.
Obviously got a first tough game week against City, but then he's got a fairly steady, granted a few away games in there.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit worried about that, and I'm worried about Arsenal in game week 1 and 3, to be honest.
Okay. But if you were to name an Arsenal player that could work his way in, I mean, finding the money for Saka is going to be hard. Would you consider a Havertz or an Odegaard, or is it Saka only?
I'm pretty certain you're the same. If you go through my camera roll in my phone and the screenshots of different teams, I've got Saka, Odegaard, and Havertz in the few. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, all three of them could quite easily hop in. And if I've not got a Salah in my team, 1 or 2 are definitely going to be in there.
Yeah, and again, no Salah also allows for Cole Palmer, but that's going to be that's such a difficult one to reach. Okay, well, look, Matt, I want to ask you more about your football career, and I'm sure we're going to be talking still FPL questions as well. But we've got some questions sent in from some of our channel members, and also I have a couple of questions for you as well. I mean, we were talking off air about Ivan Toney. Just tell us the story about Ivan Toney and how you played with him, but also how you may have supported the idea of that one-step run up and in his penalty technique.
Like, I am going. Before I say this, it is so tongue-in-cheek that I make a joke about it. Whoever I'm with and I see Ivan Toney take a penalty, I always say, "Oh, I gave him the idea of doing that kind of run up," and they go, "What are you going on about?" And my stepson's obviously tired of the story, especially when he scores in the Euros. But I used to play at Northampton. He was a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid coming through the youth team, obviously highly thought of at the time. I was injured a little bit, so I was always training and getting back to fitness with the youth team. And I always used to just mess around a little bit after training and take a no-step penalty. Because a goalkeeper actually told me this is the hardest way to save a penalty. You don't know when they're going to take it. They can't set themselves. They can't dive either way because you're literally standing over the ball and just kicking it. So obviously I was doing that with Ivan Toney, and that's why I've put that idea in his head of a no-step run-up. Tongue-in-cheek.
Love that, mate. You might have been one of the reasons why England managed to go so far in the Euros.
Well, that's what I tell everybody.
Well, look, just tell us about England. We've got some FPL questions coming up, but you were part of the England under-21s training squad as well. So back in the day when you were at Leicester, and you were clearly very, very well thought of at an international level as well as at a domestic level. So when you're at Leicester and you get that call up to join the England under-21s, you were training in Italy with the likes of Peter Crouch, and give us some names who are in that squad and what that felt like to be sort of part of that group.
Yeah, at the time, I had a great second half of the season. We played in the Premier League. I got to play, I think I got a run of about 15 games near the end of the season for Leicester. It was actually the season Arsenal were the Invincibles, so I got to play against them on the last game of the season. It was great times, great memory. And then England had a few qualifiers, I think, at the end of the season, like 2 or 3 weeks after. So they had a little training camp and then another little meet-up and a few qualifiers and friendlies, and I was part of that squad. I actually roomed with Peter Crouch when we went to Italy for the week, so I got to meet him, and it was great memories and great stories I can tell. But I think Jermaine Defoe was in there, Jermaine Pennant. I can remember Gareth Barry dropping back into the squad. So all around me, the whole experience of being with these players at similar age to me, albeit I was probably a year or 2 younger than some of them. It was, for me, it was the next step of where I wanted to go to. If you do look at my career, it probably went slightly downhill after that, but it was a great opportunity and something I can remember with fond memories.
Yeah, no one takes that away. That is awesome, mate. Tell us about pro players then playing FPL. Like, obviously, the growth of FPL has been huge in the last 4-3-2-1 years. But back when you were playing, it was still a big thing. Maybe not even just fantasy Premier League, but even back in the day of like the Sun Dream Team or like other versions of the game. Has it been something that you've discussed in dressing rooms with players? Was it popular amongst your peers?
Yeah, I'm 42 years old, so I've not played professionally for over 10 years now. But for me, I can definitely remember being on a team bus after a game and everyone looking at the teams and discussing how we've got on and giving a little bit of friendly banter out to your mates who's bottom of your mini league. So yeah, 100% now. I think now though, it's quite more apparent in the media that a lot of Premier League players do play it, and they must have a little bit of an insight into maybe who's going to play. They must have, friends in other teams and they get a little bit of information here and there. So I do feel like if you're playing, you will have that little slight advantage.
Yeah, I remember with the Haaland injury, it was like, oh, loads of his family members had taken him out as their FPL teams. We knew he wasn't going to play at the weekend based on their FPL moves. I guess you won't get nowadays that sort of leak that you might have got 10 years ago when you were playing, i.e. someone's injured or someone's out of form or this guy's on penalties. But by being a former footballer, Kanal, one of my Ultras members, asks, does it help having played the game with FPL? Are there any sort of intricacies where you go, well, that could help? For example, you've earmarked home fixtures as one where you go, being at home is a big advantage, or travel time, or anything like that where you go, this helps me.
I think them two that you've just mentioned, I know that does make a difference. I did geekily look at a few stats just before I come on air, actually, about home and away differences. And weirdly, I found that the top teams, it doesn't change that much. It is maybe 4 or 5%, but the mid to lower teams, if you're picking their players, their home form drastically improves, 15, 20% at times. So maybe I knew that anyway. I have been asked a question before, and I think that another way that I probably look at it is with injuries and what type of injuries players have and how I would have felt coming back from a certain injury. So an older player, maybe like a Trippier last season, coming back from a certain, I can't remember what injury it was, but I just thought no way he's going to be flying up and down the wing and being confident. So maybe just little nuggets that just stick in your head might just be a little bit easier for me to relate to.
Yeah, nice. The Trippier one's a great example. He looked like a different player when he came back from that injury. He was like howler after howler, but he clearly just wasn't quite up to speed yet. Okay.
And I feel like a younger player, if they're in their early 20s and they're coming back from a hamstring injury, it might not phase them one little bit. But if you're, getting on the wrong side of 30 and you're trying to come back from a muscle injury, you might be on the, erring on the side of caution a little bit.
Yeah, okay. Brandon in Malaysia, one of my Ultras members, he asked about the stress of FPL compared to the actual stress of playing football. You're fully into FPL and you'll know that sort of pressures around deadlines and tweaking your team and dreaming about the game or loads of screen grabs. Obviously, it's very different to playing it, but are there similarities? Do
you know what? Again, I'm going to say this tongue in cheek. If you're a pro footballer, you probably try and concentrate on moving away. When you're away from the football club, you try and concentrate on forgetting about it and relaxing and trying to mentally prepare in a different way. Whereas FPL, you don't want to get away from it. You want to still be in that moment. You want to think about it all week and have an informed decision on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning of what you're going to do. So, and I do find that, this will sound horrendous, but you'll probably get more annoyed at FPL because if you make that wrong decision, you might have that rage for a couple of days afterwards. Whereas if you do something or you lost a game of football, you're obviously annoyed, but you're there to work on what you did wrong and look at why it happened, and you have a more probably rounded approach about it. But you can just get that rage, can't you, with FPL?
Yeah, you so can. I've got an FPL question about how and why you did so well last year in the sec. But first, just wanted to ask, because this is from Chai, another channel member, who's your toughest opponent? You've played against Beckham and Ronaldo and the Invincibles Arsenal team, but in terms of players you've probably spent the game marking a particular striker or whatever, give us some names in terms of toughest opponents.
For me, I always found that the small, quick, nippier players, even though I wasn't quick, I didn't worry about them. So the smaller players like a Jermaine Defoe, obviously he was a great player. I played against him in training like we just spoke about for the England and the 21s, but it was more the bigger, stronger players that I just struggled with. So I remember playing against John Hartson once, and he bullied me so much that I didn't know what to do. I was young, I was a lot skinnier, he was heavier and bigger, so he was a tough one. Leeds had Mark Viduka when I played against them a few times, and him coupled with Alan Smith, that duo was so strong and tough and aggressive that, again, I can just remember players like that were really hard to deal with.
Yeah, that's interesting because how tall are you? You must be 6'4", 6'3"?
Yeah, about 6'3", 6'4".
But I guess it's not just a height thing, is it? Especially when you're young and sort of a little bit less muscle on the bone, a little bit lankier. You're playing up against the Viduka body shape or the Heskey body shape or the Hartson body shape. It's tough.
Yeah,
rolling
you can't, and it is literally about body positioning, trying to roll people, get in. And again, you've got to remember, it's a little bit different, I feel now, but back when I was playing, the managers were on you. And if you did not perform, it wasn't kind words. They were going to slate you in the changing room in front of everybody. And if you weren't winning your headers or you were getting beaten to a cross and they were scoring, that wasn't going to go down well in the changing room, especially if he was your man or your marker. So, yeah, they were the ones where I felt a little bit more pressure for me to dominate bigger players. And when I physically couldn't, it was tough.
And in open play, when you're playing against players and you're on the same pitch and you're seeing what they're doing on the football pitch, like any particular standout players where you go, he is unbelievable. Like you might not have marked him, but you might have just dictated the game in the middle of the park.
I think I can remember playing against JJ Okocha. He was at Bolton.
So good.
What a player. And you just looked at him and thought, I hope he doesn't come up against me one-on-one because I don't know what I'll do. So luckily he floated a little bit deeper, but just players that just had that ability on the ball. You just don't realise, I don't think, until you're there, how good they actually are and how they can manipulate the ball and how they can do that. But then they see a pass and they see what's going on everywhere, behind them, in front of them, to the side. So it's great to watch, but to be actually inside of it and to remember what it was like, again, you have that little bit more of appreciation. And this is why I keep saying the championship teams, they're obviously brilliant players. They're class players. To get to that level of football, to play in the championship week in, week out, is unbelievable. But that step up to the Premier League, again, is huge.
Interesting that. You mentioned Ivan Toney earlier and sort of the penalty technique story. But when you're playing with a young Ivan Toney and he's 16 years old at Northampton, did you look at him and ever think this guy could go to the very top? Because we're talking this summer about Ivan Toney being linked with a huge money move. And of course, he's linked with top tier clubs. Did you see something in him early on? Because he did, from then I think he went on to Peterborough and he played a lot of football outside of the Premier League to eventually get to the top.
As a player, I don't think you're looking at it from that lens. I think the coaches did, because the coaches were pushing him to train with the first team, and you've got a young lad training with the first team and you're thinking, oh, he can hold his own. So you obviously know he's a good player and he's got something about him. Same, I was training at Leeds when Fabian Delph was coming through, and he was another great example where he was 16 training with the first team. He was going around kicking people, and I'm thinking, what is he like? Who's this kid? Like, he's got some confidence, but obviously he went on and on and on and had a great career. So you probably don't look at it thinking that they're going to be that good, but you definitely know that they can half hold their own. And for me, I was always trying to, especially when I got a bit older, trying to help people and trying to give that little bit of advice, because I knew how important it was for me when I was young and I was getting that advice.
Nice. I want to finish with an FPL question about you and your captaincy, because last season, with your unbelievable rank, you must have bet against the field a fair few times to get to 145 in the world. So how did you and how do you treat the whole captaincy debate? Haaland at times was crazy effective ownership. This year, we won't have that in a particular player. We hope not to have that because everyone's ownership will be a bit lower. Like the highest owned players will be in the 50s, not the 80s. But do you completely play your own game with captaincy?
I think, if I'm totally honest, last year I erred with the side of caution, and I never really went different. I went with who I felt would be the best option. I probably took into account the ownership as well, and kind of, if it didn't go well for me, looking at more of my rank loss instead of a rank gain. But we were chatting, I think early on I had Salah and Haaland, and so many times I got it wrong early on in the season as well. So there is an opportunity to always gain a few points here and there. I think in the end of the day, it's not going to be horrendous if you get it wrong. It might just be, 5-6 points at worst that you lose out on, unless you get a Mateta Hall or something like a Haaland hat-trick and you're not on him for a home game. So maybe Haaland at home to the lower teams, you're not going to go away from that. Again, Ipswich at home second game. That's why I've got him.
Yeah, okay, nice. I think so many are going to look at that game week 2 fixture and just go, I know I've been planning all pre-season without Haaland, but I feel like I need him now. Interesting that he scored in Man City's opening game in the US as well. Of course he scored. Like, he's always going to score. And if you do back against Haaland, you need to be prepared for that. He's going to score goals. His record, wherever he goes, is insane. He averages about a goal a game, whether it's at Dortmund, whether it's for Norway, whether it's for Man City in any cup competition.
Yeah, can you imagine not having him and watching that game? It would be the worst 90 minutes.
That might be me. I'm still not decided on it. But yeah, if you are going without Haaland, I do think you need one Salah, because the captaincy alternatives to Haaland on the weeks, say game week 2 and game week 4, Salah has Brentford at home, Forest at home. But I think you also need Foden. If you're going without Haaland, you still have to cover that City attack. Don't go without City attack completely. If Haaland punishes you, Foden can then still contribute with some of those points, I think.
So I'll throw a question at you then. So I looked at Foden. I had Foden last year because he was unbelievable. But he scored so many good goals. Yeah, and he's obviously XG. A quality. Low XG. So he overperformed hugely, didn't he?
Yeah, loads of bangers.
Can he keep it up?
Loads of goals from the edge of the area, and you're like, oh, okay, is that sustainable? I think with Foden it is, though, because some players will always overperform their XG. Like Heung-min Son is a great example. In his time in the Premier League, that he hasn't had a single season where he's underperformed it. Like he is just an elite finisher that will always score difficult chances. And I think Foden, again, is just one of those elite finishers that will continue to score some bangers. I mean, as a team in general, Man City, I think when you look at the best attacks, I think, again, they overperformed their XG because they had De Bruyne, Rodri scored a few, Foden, all scoring a lot of goals that are like 0.5 XG chances from the edge of the box. I think it probably will continue, and I think the assist threat for Foden will continue to be high. I am conscious that when he plays out wide, he's not the same doesn't offer the same attacking threat. But I would like to think we're going to see a world in which he's one of 2 number 10s, and he'll be alongside De Bruyne if De Bruyne is still around. And at times last season, we did see him and De Bruyne on the pitch together, both playing centrally and both functioning really well. So yeah, but 7 games in the Euros for Foden. No goals, no assists, but it's very different when you play for England. So I'm hoping he returns back to that sort of type under Pep Guardiola.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, they've got the best players. They're going to invest in players that can, find their magic moments in football games. So I think, yeah, you're probably right. Foden or Haaland, if you've not got one of them, then the home games against Ipswich, against Brentford are going to be tough watches.
Yeah. I mean, I was surprised with Foden's price as well. I do think Foden's as good a performer as Saka. Maybe not quite Palmer levels, but I expected Foden to be very similar in price or the same as those two. And he's $1 million less than Palmer and $500,000 less than Saka and $5.5 million less than Haaland, which is a huge gap, which is part of the argument maybe to go without Haaland. It's a ton of money. You can still get Foden. Let's see.
But again, that's probably, in my opinion, why they had to do. He's not worth 50, but they had to do it just to make that split.
Yeah, no, it's really clever pricing. Matt, I look forward to checking in with you ahead of the start of the season. I'd love to have you back on this show at some point as well. I've loved the last 40 minutes chatting FPL with you. This is your FPL YouTube debut, is it?
It's my FPL. I did a video with Joe on FF Fantasy Football Scout last season at some point, but it's my debut with you, and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for coming, mate. And guys, thank you so much for watching. On your way out, do hit those buttons, like, subscribe, drop a comment. If you've got a question for me to pass on to Matt, I can pass it on as well. Thank you, as always, for watching. Matt, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your holiday in Norfolk. And we'll see you very soon for another video, guys. See you later. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thank you.